In Death Valley, there is a ghost town called Ballarat, and a man called Seldom Seen Slim. Me lonely? Hell no. I'm half coyote and half wild burro. In Ballarat, California, Seldom Seen Slim, who was known to his parents as Charles Furge, uttered these words countless times to his parents. These words are inscribed on his gravestone. Slim's funeral in 1968 was broadcast on television throughout the country and was viewed by millions of people. There was a particular breed of prospector who spent his entire life in and around Death Valley in the Mojave Desert, known as the Rainbow Seekers. He was one of the last survivors of the breed. Slim had a home in Ballarat since 1917. Parked at the foot of the Panamint Mountains, it's difficult to imagine a more lonely and empty place than Old Ballarat, where the weather is extreme. The maximum temperature in summer reaches 120 degrees, and the nights in winter are cold. But sitting on the porch of a general store, it's easy to see why seldom seen characters such as Slim are abandoned. So are Frank Shorty Harris, famed bartender Chris Wicht, and Wyoming gambler and gunslinger Michael J. Sherlock. Along with a collection of other desert rats who have made Ballarat their home, it's a beautiful area to see. From the incredibly steep and rugged Panamint, the flat expanse of the valley floor, and the Argus Mountains to the west, it's desert land at its finest. Ballarat was founded in 1896 as a supply depot for the mines in the Panamint Gorge. A quarter-mile to the south is Post Office Spring, a reliable source of water used by prospectors and desert wanderers since the 1850s. George Riggins, a young Australian, gave Ballarat its name when he suggested it should be named after the city in the heart of Australia's gold country. In its heyday, from 1897 to 1905, Ballarat was home to 400 to 500 people. Ballarat had 7 saloons, 3 hotels, a Wells Fargo station, a post office, a school, a prison, and a morgue, but no church. Ballarat was an oasis of fun, frolic, and relaxation. A town for blowing the dust of long roads and hard work. The town began to decline when the Ratcliffe mines in Pleasant Canyon, east of town, ceased operations. The nearby mines began to shut down, and in 1917 the post office closed, leaving only a few die-hard prospectors and desert rats. Please subscribe. The excitement subsided and Ballarat had little reason to continue as a town. Withered but not dead. Several prominent figures in Death Valley's history have made Ballarat's mud house their home. Shorty was a desert character. Carefree, open, and always friendly, he would let his friends take the shirt off his back. But he never worked in the mines. His job was to find gold, not to dig for it, and find gold is what he did. His love of Obi Joyful whiskey and his casual attitude towards money cost him not one, but numerous fortunes. His most famous achievement was the original bullfrog strike at Rhyolite near Beatty, Nevada. In 1904, Shorty traveled to Goldfield and then Keene's Wonder on the edge of Death Valley, where he teamed up with Ernest Cross. Shorty hated working alone and always shared the gold with his friends. We explored the hills west of Beatty's ranch and were also very successful with a big strike. Shorty was right, tied one-on-one, and sold his ownership for less than $1,000 while still under the influence of Obi Joyful whiskey. Shorty sold out, but there was enough left to buy a ranch near San Diego. The sale was neither the first nor the last time Shorty found a claim and parted with it, but the loss never bothered him. For him, it was exploration, it was life, and it was the desert he loved. He stayed in Ballarat because of the view from his shanty. It's spectacular, and there's no gold to replace it. Panamint overlooks the Argus Range from the valley and is a soothing sight. The Panamints behind the town tower are almost straight up from 1,067 feet in Ballarat to the peak of the Snow-Capped Telescope at 11,049 feet in Ballarat. Another story about Shorty Harris takes place at Ballarat, Shorty's favorite bar. The truth of this story cannot be confirmed, but whether it is true or not, it is a classic story of Ballarat. It was the 4th of July, and a 3-day celebration was underway. Shorty was drinking as usual but passed out in the corner of Chris Wicht's bar. His friends decided to wake him up in a way he'll never forget. They found some boards to a coffin together and put it on Chris Wicht's pool table. Shorty was put in the coffin. The votive candles were lit, and a few hours later, when Shorty was woke, Chris called the boys together, and they began to pay tribute to Shorty Harris. When he lifted the coffin lid, Shorty reportedly started screaming, jumped out and ran out of the saloon, and did not return to Ballarat for months. He probably spent some time trying to find a way to overcome that prank, but he couldn't find one. Shorty lived in Ballarat until he died in 1934. Chris Wick's saloon fell apart, but today the remains of Shorty's cabin stand north of the main road to Ballarat. The foundation and corners can be seen next to another miner's hut which is in reasonable condition. In the 1960s, Neil Cummins bought private property east of Ballarat and tried to revitalize the town. He wanted to create another Palm Springs, substituting tourism and golf for mining. He built a cinder block store and set up a trailer park with electrical wiring. However, the attempt failed, and he gave up in 1988. Another famous, or infamous, visitor came to Ballarat regularly in the 1960s. Charles Manson and the murderer's family stayed at the Barker Ranch south of town and left graffiti in Ballarat. An old Dodge is parked near the general store. The headliner in the wagon still has the star the Manson family used as a signature. Today, Ballarat has 1 or 2 full-time residents, and the shop is open most afternoons and weekends. Visitors are welcome. Many use the park as campground headquarters for expeditions to the Panamints and Death Valley. The scenery is still spectacular, and there are few traces of human habitation. As you wander through the ruins of the old town and visit the old cemetery, you can easily visualize the seldom-seen ghosts of Slim and Jim Sherlock, and hear the happy noise of Shorty and his friends in Chris Wick's Tavern. Ballarat is located north of Trona, 3.6 miles off the pavement of the north-south Trona Wildrose Road, California 178. There is a historical marker at the turnoff. Please subscribe. The rarely seen story of Slim, unofficial curator of Ballarat Ghost Town. Can you imagine living in a deserted ghost town in the middle of the Mojave Desert? No water or electricity. Can you imagine living in what was once called the outskirts of hell? It's nearly impossible to believe anyone would want to, but one man did. His name was Charles Ferge, aka the seldom-seen Slim. Slim was a prospector who stayed and claimed for over 50 years in a deserted town called Ballarat, known for its extreme temperatures and mining history. Seldom-seen Slim was a rare man who found peace and solitude in the desert. He was always a prospector in search of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I don't know who named it Rainbow Chaser, but it could have been Slim. His focus was on his mining claims. He didn't need the comforts provided by society. Material wealth was not of importance to him. He barely had enough money to sustain the meager life of a desert prospector. Slim bought food, tobacco for his pipe, water, gasoline for his car, and some clothing. Slim said he arrived in Ballarat between 1914 and 1917 and moved there before the town was deserted. When the last mine closed and the post office closed in 1917, everyone who lived in Ballarat moved out, except Slim. Ballarat became a ghost town inhabited only by Slim for many years. He lived there until his death from cancer in 1968 at the age of 80. He is buried in Boot Hill, and his grave is marked with an ornate fence plaque. Slim liked Ballarat. It was his home, his mining claims were there, and he didn't mind being alone. It was a way of life that suited him. Slim had the whole town to himself. At one point he lived in nearly every abandoned building in Ballarat. He said a fire broke out in the town one year and destroyed part of the building where he resided. He then ransacked for a while and finally got a trailer to live in. When asked if life in the desert made him lonely, he replied, "Me lonely? Hell no. I'm half coyote and half wild burro." Far from the nearest spring or well, Slim had to drive miles to fetch water, put it in a jug and bring it back to camp. The Ballarat district used to have a water source, but the groundwater level was low and the water dried up. Slim sought supplies and headed to Trona, 30 miles away. For years Slim lived without electricity and water and bathed only a few times a year. He claimed to bathe in the rain because the water kept his skin soft. Slim enjoyed his alone time, but so did the visitors. He was always welcoming to the company, sharing interesting stories and tidbits to everyone who stopped by. He served as the unofficial curator of Ballarat's ghost town. Furthermore, he often walked around the town explaining to visitors what each building was and telling a story about the history of the mine and the town. One of the frequently asked questions is, how did Slim make his money? No one knows if he had money with him when he arrived in Ballarat. He was between 32 and 35 when he first moved there. He was born in an orphanage and claimed to have no one. His early years were undocumented. Slim made some money from what he got from mining rights. mines in the area generated money for some larger operations. It's unclear what Slim made of his claims. In later years, he earned some money selling rock samples to tourists and rock hounds. As the lone inhabitant of a ghost town and a true character of the Wild West, Slim has been the subject of many articles. Slim was a desert rat and a regular celebrity in scrapbooks. His infamous sayings and idiosyncratic lifestyle captivated readers. Slim was a representative of all desert rats and prospectors of the past. To those who read about him, he represented both freedom and adventure. When travelers and rockhounds met Slim, they wanted to take pictures with him. They wrote stories about him and told stories about him. He caught the attention of everyone who crossed paths with him. Slim was a simple man who lived a simple life. He never got rich or did anything special to make himself famous. He just lived his own life the way he wanted to. It was this act that brought him minor fame and notoriety. The U.S. Department of Interior named the mountain summit in his honor. They called it Slim's Peak. He shared memories and experiences with those who were willing to listen. He was a living window into the past. Please like, share, and subscribe to US City Facts as it helps us to grow and reach new viewers. Thanks for watching.